Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Maybe I Can podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Weiss. And I know I say every single time that I'm so excited about my guest, but today I have been stalking my guest and I didn't know she was going to be my guest. And then when I realized who she was, because her name is a little bit different, so I didn't put the two together. I thought, okay, things just happen for a reason. And when you learn about what she does, it happens even more so for a reason. So let me introduce her. This is Isabeau or Beau Maxwell. She works with students across the globe to show them how to access their own strong psychic and mediumship abilities. She brings deep channeled knowledge and personal understanding to the field of spirituality. She's helped people connect to their authentic, natural, intuitive abilities for over 15 years. Beau is the founder of the award-winning intuitive development course, The Sage Method, the author of the best-selling book, Cracking Open: Adventures of a Reluctant Medium, and the creator of the popular online community, The Sage Circle. So welcome so much, Beau. I'm so excited to have you here.
I am really excited to be here. And like we had said before we jumped on here, it's like we're being magnetically pulled to each other. So I'm very grateful to be here.
Well, thank you. And you know what? As I read your intro, one thing I didn't tell you before we clicked record was that I'm getting ready to travel to Italy in 2 days. And so I'm like, what am I going to read on the plane? And since I just told you, I just had clicked on your email and I actually went to Amazon, looked, almost downloaded your book, but I was like, do I join Kindle Unlimited or do I just buy the one thing? And I must have then like gotten sidetracked. And now as I'm reading it, clearly one way or another, whether it's Kindle Unlimited or not, you know what I'll be reading on the plane. So
you just make sure to bring tissues because there's a couple spots in the book that people say, you had me choked up. So, but it's free on Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah, no, I know. I put my book on Kindle Unlimited as well. And what's super cool is, do you ever go on the thing and then you see how many pages some people have read? Like they have this whole dashboard. I'm like, just the other day, I'm like, oh my God, 600 pages. Whatever.
Well, good. I'm glad you're reading it. It'll help you to pass the time because that's a long flight. It'll help you to pass the time. Just make sure you got some of those little airline napkins in case you get a little choked up, but it's good.
That's okay. It's all good.
It's good. And it's written in a story format instead of just, hey, this is what happened to Beau. So it's like reading a story, which is fun.
Yeah.
You'll like it.
Which is great. And actually, that's what my memoir is. It's just a whole bunch of stories.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes it much more interesting to the reader to get in your head and really feel like
you're in it instead of hearing a story told later about something that had happened. It's great to be able to get pulled into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as you know, the name of the show is the Maybe I Can podcast. So I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked all of my guests. So if you don't mind, tell us about a time when you went from a defeated, I can't attitude to a more empowered, maybe I can mindset.
Well, this is part of why I was excited to come on here, because I've seen my own students and myself and my friends and my family, strong women, a lot of very strong women have moments where they're challenged. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. If someone said, hey, was there, like you're saying, what was a time when you could say, maybe I can? So it's a little backwards for me because I was raised to achieve, to be successful. But it wasn't until my early 30s. At that point, I wasn't open spiritually. I was a complete skeptic. But it wasn't until my early 30s that I realized everything that I was driven to do and told to be successful was it didn't quite fit me, right? And the things that I was told that I couldn't do were the actual things that I enjoyed and wanted to do. So here I am in my early 30s, all of a sudden having 30 years of this kind of not false confidence, but I did great in the things that I did. But now I was having the courage to step into the things that I actually wanted to do, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I found myself for the first time in my life really overwhelmed with insecurities and fear of, can I do this? Is it gonna work? What am I doing? Am I any good at this? And so it was like this reset right in the middle, right? And here I am 20 years later.
And it was
You
clearly
know,
the right thing, right?
yes, doing the right thing, but it was an incredible time because that's when I opened up to become an artist. And I had been told throughout my life that I didn't have an artistic bone in my body. That's when I started to finally hike, bike, kayak. And my entire life, I was told I am not athletic and I am not outdoorsy. And so I'm finding these, and I know those are kind of in the hobby category, but they meant a lot to me. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah. I know exactly
And
what you mean.
I was so out of my element with both of those. And then spiritually as well. I went from a complete skeptic to not a skeptic in an incident with my grandmother. And I ended up opening up spiritually. And we're talking fish out of water. Like I knew absolutely zero. I had to learn how to trust. Wow, that was hard. So that was my early 30s was really a time of figuring out who I am in conjunction with saying to myself, maybe I
Yeah.
can do this.
And was it that, and if you don't mind,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more about how you opened up and with your grandmother's passing. And was that something that was on your heart before? Was that what caused the shift for you to say, maybe I can do these things that I never thought I could? Or did it happen before, or were they related?
It's interesting. The art one happened before.
Okay.
And I even remember bringing it back to like my mom and presenting her with these art pieces that I did. And she was like, oh, So yeah, I remembered, okay, now I need to kind of step out on my own and not go back to that previous source of encouragement because that source isn't going to encourage, me in the direction that I actually want to go. So the first one was art, but then I opened up spiritually, and it was just in the last couple of years that I took, and it sounds silly to take courage to hike and to bike and a kayak,
No, it doesn't.
but I have 40 some years under my brain of, you can't do that. That's
Oh,
not
yeah.
you. You're not going to make it. So that's another hill that I had to do. So art came first, then was the spirituality opening up. And then recently was the adventure, outdoor adventure, but spirituality gave me the tools to be able to find confidence within myself. And everyone finds those tools in different avenues. And it's just a matter of finding the tools in the form that really resonates with you, right? I had the basic tool of my mom. That's what I would go to. Hey, mom, this is what I'm doing. Praise, awesome. And when I started coming back to say, hey, mom, this is what I'm doing with the things that I actually want to do. And instead of praise got, the opposite of that, I knew I had to find a different source. And it just so happened that spirituality opened up for me. And I found that's where my courage came from.
So let's just talk about the first time, because I'm obviously it's going to be in your book in greater detail, but your grandmother passes away. You've never had any kind of anything, any kind of, like you said,
Yep.
you were a skeptic, nothing you ever thought of, nothing you were in tune to, no hearing voices, nothing.
I had like one situation when I was
Okay.
like, I don't even remember. I was like 10. It's at my grandma's
Okay.
house. It's like there's a lady upstairs. She's like, that's my mom. It's like, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like the only situation. And then we went on to playing with toys. It was
Yeah.
like,
Right.
so, but no, I was a complete skeptic. I wasn't pushing any skepticism out there. I didn't care. I
Right.
had no access to spirituality, no access to religion. I had nothing. I got confirmed. Good for me. Never went
Right.
back.
Yeah.
I just couldn't get on board with the whole process. And I was a math major in college. Like that's my degree in college is literally a degree in mathematics. So it's like, this is just not, there was nothing about me that was introduced to any of this. So I was 32. I was in New Hampshire and my grandmother was in Minnesota. So a couple of, I think it was like 2,000 miles apart, somewhere around there. And she was in hospice. I had visited earlier, but I couldn't afford to be out there constantly. So my family had me on the phone in the hospice room when she passed. It was the middle of the day. I came outside of the bedroom and told my family. They went to the store to go get, wine and chocolate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm going to need it because I'm about to fall apart. This woman was everything for me.
Yep.
And I was standing there saying, should I get an airline ticket or should I fall apart? And I'm a man, I self-manage, right? So I was going to like hide those emotions, get an airline ticket, whatever. Middle of the day, she just showed up, just popped right in front of me, 10 feet away. And it wasn't even off to the side. It was directly in front of me and about 70% solid. So I was frightened.
Yeah.
I was spooked. I was scared. I remember jumping back, finding a wall, trying to and then now I look back at it and she was standing sideways. I don't know why, it was just weird. And then she turned and looked at me and smiled and winked and then left. Now I laugh at that because I know that was my, quirky little grandma going, wait till you see what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And also in the same kind of vein as what a lot of people experience right after a passing, they get a visitation. That was what happened. And then she disappeared. I didn't say anything because that's a hallucination. That's crazy. That's not real. And then my husband at the time, the next morning said, I had this super realistic dream about your grandmother. And this is what she was wearing. And it was the same outfit. And I was like, ooh, okay. And he didn't spend a lot of time with her. So this is not like, so I found a Tai Chi guy, Debbie, this is just hysterical. And there's no amount of, I'm sorry that I can give this gentleman for the rest of my life, but he's the kindest, sweetest man because I walked up to him and I was really kind of short and crass back then. I found so much compassion and spirituality and love, but I walked up to him. I remember saying, you're the weirdest guy I know. Can you help me?
Great opener.
Oh, I know. And he looked at this woman, and it looked at me, this woman, and went, oh, okay, here we go. And you know what he did? He loved me. And he said, yep, I can absolutely help you, darling. So he helped me with yes and no intuition. And I used that for months to start communicating with her. Next thing I knew, friends, loved ones are showing up. Next thing I know, I'm doing readings. Next thing I know, my guide taught me all the stuff, put it together, create the SAGE method and put it out in the world. And I've been teaching the SAGE method for like 15 years.
That is just such a story. So this is probably not professional, but I have to ask you a personal question. I have to ask you. So my husband passed away 9 months ago. He was in intensive care. It was obviously, a bad situation. And he was hooked up to all machines and whatnot. And it was 3:00 in the morning. I was asleep, and the most intense, I don't know how to explain it, feeling. It was nothing like seeing him. It was nothing like that, because I've had a couple others since then that are much more pleasant, just like good energy and light. This was almost painful, but not really. I'm doing a bad job of putting it into words. It was intense. Let's just say that. There was no denying. So it felt like something big was going through me. And I looked at the phone expecting that I was going to get a phone call that he had passed just then.
Yeah.
And I didn't. It was about 3 a.m. About 6 a.m, I got a call that says, get here as soon as you can. And then they explained how they're going to turn off all the machines, blah, blah, blah. This is what's going to happen. And then we'll come in and we'll take him off the ventilator. My cousin was with me. I turned to her. The nurse was like, I'm going to start the process. Okay. I turned to my cousin, and literally 10 seconds later, she goes, he's gone. And so, my feeling is that's when he left at 3:00 in the morning.
Yes.
And so I just want to hear what your take on that is, and then we'll jump back into the questions.
Absolutely. Go with that gut feeling. You knew. First off, I'm so sorry for your loss because I can feel the bond when you're talking about it. And so I'm very sorry for your loss, but yes, this absolutely does happen. People that are in I've worked with a lot of people who are passing. I work with a lot of people who are in the in-between transitioning to the other side. That's another aspect of my job. It's not so much out the public part that I do, but that's a big part of my work. And a lot of people who are non-communicative, they come and go, right? They're between the two, and it's a back and a forth. And you'll read some of that in the book. There's a chapter about somebody that has I had the experience with them in reference to that coming and going. They're still
Okay.
alive, but they're here, but they're there.
Yes.
Absolutely. 100%. So you knew, and it feels like a visit, and it feels like this is where I'm headed. Sometimes the body takes a little bit longer to go.
Yeah. And especially because it was really,
Oh yeah.
if it weren't for the machines, right?
Oh yeah.
So, okay. Well, thank you. Well, that was a little commercial. That was a little, private Debbie time trying to,
It's a good example. There's so many people that have sat with someone who's non-communicative and said, are they there? And when we say that they're here and they're there, yes, they are present with you, but they are either anchored into their physical body in that room and their consciousness is in that room, or their consciousness, even though their body is still alive, their consciousness is able to go and explore and be in the in-between in the transition process, but they're still aware. So the coming and going, if they're in their physical body, they're only aware of that room and what's happening to them. When we say that they go, even though their body's still there, they're not only aware of what's happening in that room, but they have like spiritual awareness of everything going on outside of that, and they can travel anywhere they want, which is why a lot of people, and I love your story. I just think it's so beautiful because it's so relatable to so many people, and a lot of people have a visit before the actual body stops.
I think, for a long time too, I was skeptical until I had some different experiences. And I think now the more experience that you have, and the more intrigued you are, at least for me. That's why I almost clicked and bought your course, which I obviously will be doing. Um,
Yeah,
but
it was interesting when I first opened up because I was so nervous to tell people that I was
yeah,
having mediumship. I wouldn't even call myself a medium in the beginning because I personally had carried so much judgment in the past around it that it was not real. And I remember, and when I first opened up, it was before all those fabulous shows, Medium, Ghost Whisperer, right? So a lot of people didn't know what a medium was when I opened. And so I would have to explain it to them. And the one thing that I found really funny is people say, do you like to turn skeptics? Nope. If someone's a skeptic, let them be exactly where they are. I would have been really mad at you if you tried to turn me too. So stop that. Let them be where they're going to be. But I would run into skeptics. And the one thing they all had in common with me, when I told them what I did, they'd say, well, I don't really believe in that kind of stuff. The one thing in common, they would always follow it up with saying, but there was this one time. Everyone has a one time.
yes.
And sometimes the one time isn't enough to engage you on that path, but everyone's had an experience.
Exactly. I agree with that. Sometimes you just don't know it's an experience. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's just say, okay, it's not an experience with a loved one or something like that. How does, I'm thinking to myself, I'm in the process of trying to figure out, how do I listen to my intuition? Actually, I had a conversation with my business coach earlier today. I'm like, I have learned my logical brain is telling me A, but I know that my intuition is telling me B. And I have finally learned I'm going with B.
Yeah.
And it's and I laugh too, when you're a math major, I was an accounting major. This is not my wheelhouse. This is not where I, quote unquote, should be, my brain should be, because it doesn't follow a formula. It doesn't follow a mathematical formula.
Yes.
So how does the everyday average person even start to tap into their own intuition, that little whisper? Where do you find it? What do you have to do does everybody have it and they just don't know how to access it?
Yeah, the couple of key points that, I am the poster child. I am the one that if I can do this, I am type A Taurus driven former skeptic. And if I can access my intuition at the levels that I can access it, everyone can. So a couple key points that I try to tell people is I love TV. I love pop culture. I do. I'm right there and watching everything go down, and it's a human thing. I get it. But television has done a really great job at editing actual mediums. So yes, mediums that are legit and wonderful and amazing people, but they've done such a great job in editing them in such a way that it makes people at home watching the shows feel like that person is special and that person has a gift and I don't. I encourage people to let go of that, to remember that these mediums' jobs, this is what they do every single day. When I started teaching the SAGE method, I wasn't sure. I remember that. So the first round of the SAGE method was back in like 2007, 2008. And I brought a bunch of my clients together at the time because I had become a professional intuitive. And I said, can I just test this on you? And so we met for 7 weeks or so, and watching what they could do at the end of the SAGE method blew my mind. I was instantly a kid in a candy store. Who else can I teach? Who else can I teach so that they can have this opening? And that's when I kept working with my guide. Everyone's intuitive. Everyone's intuition is already 100% open. The concept that we need to attain it or gain it or get it from somewhere or use it as a muscle so it gets stronger, all of those don't hold up. In essence, your intuition, your intuitive channel is crowded and cluttered. And that's a natural thing that happens in this world. It starts in the teen years. This is why those little kids are so intuitive, right? And then teens. So, right, we go on through the teens and we have our experience. All these experiences, we get mental, emotional, environmental, physical clutter. And that clutter is what's stopping your intuition from coming through. That, with some techniques and some awareness, people open right up. And I would actually love to give 2 quick things that people listening can just try like now.
Fantastic. That would be great. Love that.
Try like right now. And so
Okay.
my thing is that if I can get everyone to realize that they can access this, your intuition is your 6th sense that is going to use your other 5 senses to communicate. And yes, when we just know something, that's legit too. But the 2 things I tell people is, number 1, take care of your energetic space. Your energetic space is, so your physical body is your physical body. Your energy body is not only within you, but it expands outside of you. So your energetic space is like an energy suit that you're wearing. And everything that you interact with, we can, especially compassionate, caring people, we can magnetically take on other people's stuff. This is why we can't fall asleep at night. This is why we stew. This is why we're worried when we have nothing to worry about, because we're carrying other people's emotions. So that energy body, it's like you're carrying a bunch of other people's stuff. So if you start taking care of that, clean that out, clear that out, 3 simple steps. This, ground, clear, protect is the technique that I teach people. Ground yourself to Mother Earth. Imagine clearing out all of the energies that are not yours, and then put a bubble around yourself to stop unwanted energies from coming in. Ground, clear, protect. That right there is a game changer. People will see life start to shift just by doing that once a day for a week. The other one is more of an aha moment. And I love this one so much because this one has tipped open so many people's intuition just by the concept of it. When we see something out of the corner of our eye, and then we turn to look and then we don't see it, because once you turn to look, you can't see anything.
Yes.
There's a reason. Our intuition, messages, loved ones, guides, source, higher self, information, all of that we're trying to access intuitively is not in the material world. So when your eyes are searching material objects, you're not looking in the right place. This is why you did see something in your peripheral, because your peripheral is blurred. It's not focused. And then you turned and you looked at the table, the wall, the chair, right? You're searching the material things. So I tell people, go back to, you remember those paintings back in the 70s that you could like defocus and you saw something?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Bring it on. Start practicing that. Sit in front of a blank wall and just let your sit in front of a blank wall, sit in front of a candle, sit in front of a bowl of water, stare at the carpet, and then let your eyesight relax, because everything you're looking for intuitively is in between the solid. So that tidbit right there has helped a lot of people start to have visuals, sounds, smells, etc., from their intuition.
Wow. Can't wait to get off the podcast and try.
I know. I
Gotta go,
if you
everyone.
can tell, if you can tell, I love teaching, and there's so much knowledge that I just want to get to people so that they can use it in their everyday lives. 98% of my students in the last 15 years that I've been teaching just use their intuition for not even just, but they organically use their intuition in their day-to-day life.
Which is amazing. And I, when I was looking online at your website too, I saw that too, because I think the same thing. Oh dear, does that mean that I think that this is what I want to do for a living? Like, I'm sure that's everybody's first thought, because actually my next question is, and this is confusing, what is the difference between a psychic and a medium? And what's an intuitive reader? Is that another name for one of those? Or I don't even really understand. I thought a psychic and a medium were kind of the same, but
they're different. They're definitely
okay.
different, but we haven't really experienced enough of the psychic and the mediumship world in pop culture for everyone to really understand the difference of it.
Okay.
When I first started doing readings, I had to tell people, so I'm a medium, and the courses that I teach, both medium and psychic, in almost every single course I teach, because everyone's different. But I do lean toward the mediumship side. But when I first started working back in 2000 as a medium, back in 2007 or somewhere around there, I had to call myself a psychic because nobody knew what a medium was. So we're getting there. You'll see a lot of people say that they're either an intuitive reader or a psychic medium. It's just words to try to get people to understand that they're tapping into something you can't see. But there is a difference. Psychics can tap in like they're diving into a lake and they can swim anywhere to explore. That's sort of how psychics work. And they can tap into the energy of a place, a person, a timeline, an experience, etc. Whereas a medium, it's a conversation with a conscious being. So we can't really jump into the lake and swim around as mediums. We got to stand on the dock and wait for a deceased person to come up in a boat and say, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
So it's, you know how, like, if you got curly hair, you want straight, and you got straight hair, you want curly hair.
Absolutely.
In my community, that's the running joke, is like, I'm psychic, I wish I had medium. And mediums are like, I'm medium, I wish I had more psychic. So it's definitely, and most people fall somewhere in the middle and they can access both. But some people do fall one way or the other. The way I explain it to my friends, if I lose my keys, I'm not going to have very high accuracy just trying to feel where they are. I'm going to have to look for a deceased person, ask them if they know. Like,
gotcha.
That's the difference.
And what is an intuitive reader? Is there a difference? Is that a third category, or is that just another name that's used basically for both, to have people understand?
It's a name really to use for people to understand. Intuitive reader is like the umbrella.
Okay.
And then underneath that, you're going to have a couple main categories. Really, there's 4 main categories. There's psychic, there's medium, there's animal communication, and then there's medical intuitive. So those are 4. There's other little ones in there.
Sure.
There are people that everyone's so different. And I love all the differences in intuition. But some people, I'm a timeline reader. So I'm a medium, but I'm also a timeline reader. So I get, like, they usually talk to me in terms of a month ago, a year ago, 2 months from now, 2 years from now. And then there are people that are relationship readers. There are people that read family structures and things like this. Everyone has their niche that they're good at.
How do you, I'm sure this field is similar to all fields, in that, how do you know that you're going to find someone that you can trust? And people are leery, and you know how people are always saying, oh, she said that, but she could have been saying that to me, and that could have applied, and it's really not true. Or you go and for a reading and nothing resonated with you, or they tell you something that what's the seal of approval? How is there a designation, or you know what I mean?
Oh, I have fierce advice around this one.
Okay.
Right. This is one of my pet peeves,
Sure.
But it's just the way the world is. Do not go to an intuitive without a referral. Don't do it. Just don't. there are so many scam artists out there, and there are so many people who are dealing with grief and loss. And there really is such a thing as what's called a cold reading. I could do a cold reading for you right now. You have a Tom in your family, you have a Mary in your family. Somebody died from cancer, someone lived on the farm, and there's so many generic pieces. So J name, M name. Now, to be fair, a good intuitive sometimes does get that. Where in the middle of what they're saying, they're like, I've got a name and I know it's a J. But if the entire thing is like that, if the reader is trying to get you to fill in all the blanks, for example, when I do a reading, if I have an hour reading with somebody, you're not even going to talk for the first 15, 20 minutes. It's just going to be me talking, because so that's the difference. If you sit down, do not go into anywhere that has neon lights. Okay. If you're going to a fair, just know you're going to a fair and it's fun. Okay. Palm readers are actually really good no matter where they are, because that's a technical thing. Get a referral. Absolutely get a referral from somebody that you know, you trust, to get into a spiritual community. If you can see that person in action for a little bit, get to know them. But there are a lot of con artists out there. And there's a lot of people. And there's also intuitives who their heart is in the right place. They are not con artists, but they have not trained in my, what I think, well enough to be able to maintain a clear channel for an entire hour. So there's legit ones out there. You're going to have to wait for them, and you might have to pay a little bit more, but get to know them first, because there's so many. And if any of them tell you that you have to read you regularly, or that there's like a curse or something, run as fast as you can. People say, well, how often can I get a reading from you, Beau? And I'm like, twice a year, please. I'm not going to tell you anything we didn't say, in this one. So any kind of stringing along or curse or any fear-based information, tell them to step off the nearest cliff and get in your car and go home. And I'm trying to, that's my way of saying it with love. That's how angry I get at the con artists out there.
Well, understandable. And I think it's specifically with a field that is filled with so many people who are so skeptical. And then you add those con artists and people have that experience. And of course, you think they're all like that, right? I knew it. That was just proof that what I thought as a skeptic was true.
Exactly. And there's also, and if you don't have any references, if you don't know where to start, right? There's two colleges, I think, in the United States now. There was one, I think it was in Arizona, but there's two colleges that literally test mediums. We're talking like double, triple blind testing.
Really?
I was tested for somebody going through PhD. So I went through a testing platform too. And so there are mediums out there that have been tested and verified by universities, where they hold them to that. So if you really want that, then go for it. But there's a lot of, and you also can't really go by the price tag either, because I will say it like this, there's some gentlemen out there right now that are making some big names and charging a lot of money, and
not legit. Yeah. So I have a friend let me ask you this. I have a friend who refuses to go because she's afraid of what she's going to hear, afraid they're going to tell her something ominous. How does that work? Because I'm sure that's a pretty common fear.
It is. And if you would have asked me to go see an intuitive before I opened up, I'd be like, no way. And I have met people who have been told very ominous things from people that were not legit. I met a young man who was 22 and he gave up on life because a psychic told him he was going to die at 23. So he never went to college. Yeah. And so luckily, I read him and we were able to sit down, and the stuff that came through was 10 times stronger. And so he was able to listen and go, okay, whatever. But that was just a fluke that I met him and I met his mom, right? There's still people out there that have had that. So to her, I would say, again, reputable. A good intuitive is not going to tell you something ominous or fearful. And I can tell you exactly why. Because loved ones on the other side, higher self, guides, however you want to categorize them. I work with people all over the globe. However you want to categorize that source, they are not going to scare you. It doesn't help a thing, right? So putting fear into a person is not even remotely anything that comes from the other side. They're not going to tell you death dates. They're not going to, unless you're like, I'm sitting next to my mom who should have gone 4 days ago, then
Right.
they might have that conversation, but they don't tell, there's no reason to scare you. It won't help you. And actual sources that are coming through intuitively only want to assist.
That's nice to hear. I think will help those that are nervous and scared. So you talked in the beginning about that you connected to your spirit guide. What does that mean? Do you have one specific spirit guide that you are channeling all the time? Is it your grandmother? Give us a little more explanation about what that
Yeah,
means.
I did think it was her. And I thought this is the coolest thing that's ever happened. Once she
Yeah.
proved it was her, and I asked for proof, and once she gave me proof, I was like, okay. She predicted something that was going to happen hours before it happened, and there was no way that could have happened. Then I thought, Scooby-Doo, here it is. I'm with her. This is it. I got a direct line to my grandma forever. Like, this is
How great is
wonderful.
this?
Yeah. And then more deceased people started showing up. And then that I went right back into fear around that. So I had to work through it. But I was at a friend's house and they lived in woods, and I was leaving and I saw an energy in the woods that I was just absolutely drawn to. And I didn't know what I was doing. So I went out there and I knew it was a person, but I couldn't see them. They said, keep coming back. You're going to read all this in the book. On the airplane or listen to it. And he said, keep coming back. And I did. And that ended up being my first teaching guide. And he was the one that taught me how to open up my intuition. He was the one that went kind of against because I had taken a couple psychic classes from living people. And I was like, this isn't helping anything. So he was the one that said, no, approach it this way. And he helped me open up my intuition. From there, it was like 2 years after I opened and was working with him that he said, take everything I taught you and package it and bring it out into the world. That's where the SAGE method was born. So when I ask people to go through the SAGE method, I'm asking you to do the same thing that I did stubbornly for 2 years. I'm asking you to do it in 7 weeks.
Yeah.
But from there, then I met my next guide and my next guide. So what I tell people is there's no limited number of guides. There's no standard. Anytime you think in terms of limitation, you've really lost a grasp on spirituality and what's really around you. So there's no guide, there's no solid number. The guides that are going to be closest to you in any particular time are the ones that are helping you with what's going on right now. Marriage, divorce, kids, empty nest, all of those big transitions you typically will have another guide come in to help you with that. And sometimes you'll have a teaching guide.
Is it someone you know?
Some of the guides, yes. Yep. Some of the guides are people that you knew in life, and then they watch over you. They get on the team.
Okay. I love that too. Who's on my
love
team?
that too.
Come on, guys. I'm all about teamwork.
It was one of my favorites. And I've been doing readings for so long now. I would say 75% of the time a loved one will come through and they're with you and loving you and being with you in that form until such time as they can be together with you again. And about 25% of the time, you'll have like a mom, a grandma, a spouse come through from the other side and be like, I'm on the team. And it's like this really cool, it's like awesome. They're like, I'm on the team, I'm helping. So some of the guides you do know. Some of the guides can be people that are in your soul group, but did not come into this lifetime. So they stayed back to watch over you. They know your game plan. They know overall what you're trying to do, even though you don't.
Yeah.
And then lastly, you're also going to occasionally have some of the higher ups, as we would say in our human world, that might be coming and working with you to have a ripple effect in the world.
So, personal question, someone always talking to you? How do you turn it on and off? Because, oh my goodness, you can't live like that.
So, as I said, with you reading the book too, you're gonna read this.
Sorry, but
yeah, no, it's perfect.
The
book is the first 2 years of me opening up.
Yeah,
so it's raw and real, and I didn't really keep anything out of it. So, but I went to a therapist. I went to therapy because I thought I was going crazy. I was overwhelmed with it. When you go from thinking that you lock your door at night to there's no lock that can stop anything, I needed a therapist, and I didn't have a social structure. This is why I created the SAGE Circle. which is the online spiritual group. That's because I didn't have that. So I'm providing that safe space for people. But at first I saw them all the time. And then I learned what I call practice ignoring. Some people say turning it off. And yes, it's whatever verbiage works for each person. But for me, it's practice ignoring. The longer you use your intuition, the more you get a feel for when you're leaning into your spiritual body versus leaning into your human body. So what that means is if I want to have real human time like this, I'm actually treating this as I'm on a podcast with you and it's like, this is human time. Me and Debbie are chatting. And so I'm very focused on the solid world around me. Whereas if I relax, I can get more access to the spiritual world. If somebody absolutely needs to say something, which might happen once or twice a month at this point, they'll come in and they'll be like, hey, I need you to reach out to so and say so and so. But it's just not as frequent because they're working with the person directly anyway, guiding them. So at first, yeah, I didn't like going to the store.
I don't blame you.
But but I quickly learned with my guide, it's what you put your focus on. I would be going into the store going, how many deceased people am I going to see? Well, now you're going to see a bunch, Beau, because that's what you're thinking about. So, you learn that what you put your focus on is how you turn it on or off.
Which completely makes sense to me as you say that. What would you tell the average person? Obviously, it's great to learn to tap into your own intuition. Where does seeing a medium or a psychic on a regular basis advantageous to you? And is that something you recommend? Like, what is the purpose of having, the human medium on your team?
So if somebody wanted to connect with a reader for guidance, I would tell them no more than quarterly, no more than like 4 times a year, because readers are typically in general talking about general time spans. They're not necessarily talking about what's going to happen next week. Now call me next week. And you can touch base. I have a lot of longtime clients that touch base like once a year just to say where I'm at, what's going on. And I have a lot of people that touch base because they're working with me to learn how to open their own intuitions. I'm actually trying to get myself out of that job, right? Out of the reading job. And I'm trying to teach everybody to be able to tap in and get their own answers. So the more work I do, the kind of longer it is in between that people touch base with me. They're like, all right, it's been 3 years and this one I just can't seem to see clearly. So I need some assistance with it. But we're so guided, even though we can't see it all the time, that even if, with the small exception of getting a reading to have closure or communication or feel good knowing that somebody's on the other side, or making a really big life decision, what am I not paying attention to? You're already being guided. So more often than not, we don't need one,
Yeah, I hear you. So I absolutely love that you've been guided to create this course and to share your method. On a different level, it's kind of how I felt. I went through an aha moment, not in the same way, but an aha moment where I realized, I just thought I was a victim of my life circumstances. And I was a happy victim. Like, it wasn't like I was, a Debbie Downer, but I felt like, and this is life, right? One big challenge after another. And I just assumed this is it. This is my destiny. And I'm riding it out. And whatever happens, this is what's meant to be. And this is my lot in life. And when I realized, these things, these events, these obstacles have happened, but it's really how I'm responding to these obstacles, and that I have the power to change the course of my life despite the obstacles placed in front of me, because we all have obstacles placed in front of you, right? Of us. And so my aha moment was that, like, oh my goodness, I've been walking around for 50 years thinking I didn't have a choice and it is what it is. And when I realized, I feel like now I want to go scream it from the mountaintops, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like you're doing the same thing.
Yes. Everything is possible. There is no too late. That doesn't exist. And we can be active participants in our experience. We're not stuck into like the lot in life. Everyone has different hurdles, and some people's hurdles, I need to take a minute to honor, they're huge, right? But find community. Don't be alone with it. Find people that'll show up for you too. Get the tools. I mean, Debbie, your book, it's a tool. That's,
Absolutely.
maybe I can just reading that book and seeing from somebody else's eyes, hey, they did this too. It's possible. That's everything. That's everything. And we really are, we're limited in the human world, but we have unlimited possibilities that we can step into.
I love that. That sounds like a good way to end. But before I say that, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us that you haven't already?
Just the encouragement and the reminder that for the people listening, you deserve someone to see you authentically for who you are, multiple people to see that. And you deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to be shown up for. And there's people in the world that will do that. So if you don't have access to that right away, find these tools, read Debbie's book, find some I have spiritual community, right? Find places where you're loved and you're safe. And that's going to be a great foundational tool for you in your journey.
Great advice. And nowadays online, there are unlimited amount of free resources and free groups where you can find all those things. So if money's what's holding you back, it doesn't need to be.
Don't let it hold you back. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, Beau, I could really take up the rest of your day, maybe the rest of the week, but I don't think you have me scheduled that long on your calendar. So thank you so, so much. Of course, I will share the links for your book, for your course, for your everything you've got will be in the show notes. But why don't you just share with the audience your website? Because I know pretty much we can get everything from there.
Yeah, I keep everything in one location. And speaking of free resources, I tell people do the there's a free course in there. And it's a bigger course than just a, have a nice day course. So start there. Absolutely start there. And it's all found on the website, thesagemethod.com, THESAGE method.com.
Wonderful. And you also have a podcast, yes?
I do. The Sage Method.
There you go. Well, what a coincidence. Yeah, that's the name.
Well, and so the podcast and the YouTube channel are the same thing, depending on if people like the video version or the audio version. But if you want to learn, those are also both amazing free resources as far as learning intuition and tapping into your intuition.
And I just have to agree with that because I was just telling Beau, I'm on her email list and she sends out when she posts a video on YouTube. And I was just clicking on it, watching one the other day, free, super interesting, super helpful. So thank you for all you do in every way. And thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And everyone, we'll see you next time.